Hello, people, and welcome to the People Building Podcast. Today, I'm joined by the amazing Michael Herst, who has the most amazing story of recovery to share with us. Michael has a history of working in law enforcement, so he has a number of stories to share from that background, and that means that there are some pretty hefty trigger warnings for today's show. There is talk around experiences of helping people with suicidal ideation, helping families who have had family members pass away by suicide, and coming into scenes where a suicide has taken place. So if any of those sorts of subject areas are delicate for you, this may not be the podcast for you to watch or listen to today. As I mentioned, Michael has a history of law enforcement, so you can also expect some conversation around murder, domestic violence, living with PTSD after all of that stuff, as well as his experiences in helping people who have been victims of rape and sexual assault. So, with all of that being said, let me tell you that Michael's reasons for moving into a law enforcement career really come from a positive rebellion. So he came from a slightly chaotic family background, and he rebelled against all of that in the most positive and helpful way by becoming a police officer. So I think that there was an aspect of making peace with his own childhood by way of going into that particular career. Now, the other thing that's interesting about a career choice like that is not just rebelling against the perhaps chaotic and law-breaking family, but also it's the kind of career where you almost create another family. You will hear him speak about his colleagues in law enforcement as his brotherhood. And so as well as his job being very tangled up with his identity, it was also an underpinning factor in what enabled him to feel a sense of connection, love and connection with other people as well. And it gave him an enormous sense of purpose. So, plot twist, this is not a career that lasts forever for Michael. It does, however, during the time that he's there, give him an experience of dealing with very intense situations, which I'm sure helped him to develop some grit and resilience that undoubtedly came in helpful for his own life experiences that were going to be coming up in the future. And so the main message that I will share with you at this stage is that life can change in an instant. I will hop back here at the other side of the interview with Michael to share my final thoughts with you. But for now, please sit back and enjoy the interview with the amazing Michael Herst. Hello and welcome everybody. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Michael Herst, who I was very fortunate to come to know as a result of speaking on his fantastic show just a couple of weeks ago, I think it was, wasn't it? And we got to know each other then. So as part of the conversation that I had with Michael, he was revealing little snippets about himself and his own life, and I was thinking, he sounds like someone that needs to come on my show. He sounds like a cool guy. So I'm very honored to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be here as well. And thank you for calling me cool. I'm going to just put that in my notes.
Now, that can't be the first time. I'm quite sure of it.
I should put that in my bio, and a really cool guy.
All right. So on that note then, if you were giving me your bio, what would it sound like? What would you say?
Well, my name is Michael Herst, and I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area. I'm a retired police sergeant. I was injured in line of duty A number of years ago, I was told I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life and never walk again. And I walked my daughter down the aisle, and my wheelchair sits in the garage collecting dust. And I like to help people move forward in a very positive way. And I do that now through reinventing my purpose. And I host a podcast called One More Thing Before You Go. And we talk about triumph over tragedy stories and moving
Yeah.
people forward in a positive way like I did.
Amazing. I love that. So there's so many things, there's so many different rabbit holes that I'm just dying to jump down.
Mhm.
So let's go back to earlier life for you. Did you always know that you were going to be a policeman when you grew up, that you were going to work in law enforcement?
Absolutely. Oh, I need to say really quick, I am a husband of 33 years as of the 23rd of this month, and I have 2
Oh,
wonderful daughters.
congrats.
2 wonderful I'm not used to being on this side of the mic.
And you have
Uh,
to mention the fam, because otherwise they will not be happy that they got missed
exactly.
off of biography,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. Yes, I had always wanted to be a police officer. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, and I think my goal in life at that time was to kind of get out of that situation and help other people within that situation. I felt that I could contribute to society. So when I graduated high school here, I went on to community college. And when I went to community college, I majored in criminal justice. My objective was to become a police officer and
Okay.
protect and serve.
So it's a probably not uncommon, but to me quite a curious motivation for becoming a police officer coming from a dysfunctional family. I'm sure that you're not the first person to come from a dysfunctional family and to say, you know what, I'm going to clean these streets up, and go in a different direction to the one that you came from. What was that like for your family? How did they process your? It's kind of a rebellion, right? You know, you're rebelling
Mhm.
in a good way. You're rebelling against what they were, or who how they were, and you know, setting up your own life in a very different way. So how did your family take to that?
It's really interesting. My father died when I was 17 years old, so I grew up with a single parent, a
Mhm.
single mother who was trying to raise three kids actually, and so from that environment, I can't tell you what the reflection is with my father. I know my father wanted me to be a writer like he was.
Okay.
So after I made the decision when I was like 14 or 15 years old, I made the decision to become a police officer and go into law enforcement.
Hmm.
Most of their situation was, why would you want to do something stupid like that? From that perspective. And to me, that wasn't stupid because I felt that, again, in observing, I was a middle child, had an
Hmm.
I have an older sister, not had. Let me
Yeah.
take that back from the universe. I have an
Yeah.
older sister and I have a younger brother. And
Okay.
both my parents were alcoholics.
Right.
My mother eventually married somebody that kind of helped her through that process, but it took her a long
Right.
time to get to that point. The
Okay.
alcoholism did take my father's life.
Yeah.
So when I had kind of was adamant about the fact that I wanted to get into law enforcement, I actually, one of my major prospects was DUI enforcement. But,
Right. Yeah.
and I took over a team and worked with a team that specifically just did that. And I felt that was an opportunity for me to kind of um, get in control of what my childhood was. And also
Yes.
worked domestic violence. I chose
Right.
both of those details based upon that. So when I went into both of those arenas, my family, my mother was proud of me.
Yeah.
The rest of my family were kind of iffy because
Mm.
I've got like, what, 8 uncles and
Okay.
aunts and a multitude of cousins. You could probably, I couldn't count them all
Yeah. Yeah.
because of that big of a family, but, there's a lot of them were involved in I'm giving away secrets here. A
Yeah.
lot of them were involved in, unfortunately, alcoholism and drug abuse and still continue. Some of those proportions of the family still continue and struggle with that, with their kids and their grandkids. because it kind of perpetuates. Um, the majority of family were okay with me being a cop.
Yep.
My mother eventually came around to being proud of me for taking that profession instead of becoming a writer, which I have come about. We'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yes.
Back to
Yes.
that, um, ironically enough, but I was supported more by my sister and my brother-in-law. If I
Okay.
want to be really particular,
Yeah. Yeah.
honest with
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
my mother still felt that I was kind of not betraying the family,
Mhm.
but in a sense, like you had said
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
My sister and my brother-in-law, he was from Rome, and
Yeah.
he kind of took over the big brother role when I lost my dad.
Yeah.
And he himself said, "I'm really proud for you taking this opportunity," and that gave me um, more purpose for what I was doing and to really kind of delve into that career. I loved my career.
Yeah.
I was a sergeant. I worked my way up to sergeant. I was on route to taking a lieutenant's test, and I kind of
Okay.
got cut short. So
Yeah.
we can talk about that when you're ready. But it got cut short.
What do you think your dad would have thought?
From my father's perspective, my father tried to be a good father, and circumstances didn't allow that. And he is a good individual. He just had an issue with a substance that took control of his life more than he could take control of it.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
understand that years later, and especially working with the DUI task force and understanding the
Sure.
elements of alcoholism and the
Yeah.
what it does to you and how it does to you and the effects of it and everything. You learn all that when you specialize in something like that in
Yeah.
DUI enforcement. Um, I think that he would be proud of. I would hope that he would be proud of me for what I've done and what I've contributed back to society because in my career, I've been able to make some very positive impact on people's lives. And
Yeah.
even in the DUI enforcement area, because people said, Joe, I made a mistake. And now I realize the mistake I made. And,
Yeah.
you put me on a better path.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think from that perspective, he'd be proud.
Yeah. Okay, that's really cool. And I'm guessing as well because you were so successful in your career, uh, it would be very difficult for people to not see that you had pride in what you were doing and for them to
Yeah.
subsequently feel proud of you for the things that you achieved. I remember you saying back when you were I was on your show that you'd been responsible for catching some pretty bad guys at some stage as well.
I loved catching bad guys. I, yes, I was part of a team that caught two of America's most wanted. And we did that, different time periods, of course.
Yeah.
I got to be on details that protected two presidents of the United States,
Wow.
which I thought was, well, actually, yeah, two presidents of the United States
Yeah.
and the Prime Minister of Japan. So, I had some kudos on many aspects because I was chosen for that. Those kind of details you're picked for.
Mm.
You don't say, hey, give me, give me, give me. I want this. I want this. I want this. And you have to earn it and kind of a thing. So yeah, I really enjoyed my career. I was able to, like I say, make a positive impact on many people. I have. I'm not bragging. I'm just proud of the fact that I was able to talk some people out of suicide and put them on
Wow.
a new life path. And I even received cards from felons that said, "Thank you for not treating me like a felon, and you helped me change my life," and things like
Yeah.
that. So, that to me showed that as I developed my law enforcement career, it
Mhm.
was the right path for me, and that
100%.
my decision was correct,
Yeah.
and that I was able to do exactly what I wanted to do: change people's lives, protect and
Yes.
serve.
Yeah.
When I worked at domestic violence task force for 4 years, it was very difficult, but we notwithstanding that any domestic violence is good,
Yeah.
but we worked the worst of the worst. We worked the top level bad people
Okay.
that did this, both men and women,
Yeah.
who were involved in domestic violence and serial domestic violence, and just cases that would, if they really got onto the public, be horrific for some individuals. So I mean, to think about what these people went through.
Yeah.
that in itself allowed me the opportunity to take people out of those situations, both women, men, and children,
Yeah.
so that it gave them a new life, a different path on their life.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yeah, I really I enjoyed what I'm doing. I miss being a cop. People ask me why were you a cop? Why do you want to be a cop? Why do you want to be a police officer? And and I can say this for a lot of my brotherhood because they have stuck with me through my journey, through my illness, and through my surgeries and everything else.
Yeah.
It's a brotherhood and a sisterhood, and it's who we are. It's not just a job. It's not a profession. It's who we are.
Mm.
Just like doctors, it's who they are. A nurse, it's who they are. I would never be a brain surgeon. I don't have any inclination to open somebody's head up and start exploring all that and pressing buttons. I don't want to do that. Uh, but there's other people that don't want to, stand in front of everybody else that's running that way and protecting
Yes.
them from that danger.
Yeah.
So it was, and I say this because obviously we're going to talk about reinventing ourselves and reinventing our purpose. In my life, I understood that that was my purpose.
Yeah.
That's me. That's part of me. It's still part of
Yeah.
me.
Mhm.
My wife can tell you, we'll sit and watch cop shows, and I'm like, wait a minute, they wouldn't do that. They're doing that
I'm
wrong.
that annoying person when I watch shows with psychologists in it, and and I sit there going, "Actually, that's not very ethical, is it?"
Oh, exactly. It's like, no, no, give me a phone number. Like, call these people up and say, no, set you straight here. Um, But it's who we are, it's who I
Yeah.
was and who I am still inside. I still seek for the justice. I still, root for the underdog. I still, want to participate in, if I see somebody that's being bullied, I take a proactive approach to that.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things. That's who I am and who I that's my identity.
Yeah.
And that was my identity more so than now.
Sure. So I'm curious about the with some of those situations that you were working in. Some of those would have got really intense. How did you take care of yourself through that? When you came home, were you good at leaving it all behind? If I was going to ask your wife about this and say, what was he like after a really bad day? Um, what do you think she would say? Were you quite good at managing? Because it must have some emotional toil on you, right? Working in
It
some of
does.
those cases.
Any situation, especially in emergency service personnel, whether it be police officer, firefighter, EMT, those situations you have instantaneous moments of adrenaline, and then
Mhm.
you come back down, and then it's instantaneous adrenaline again. This is during your whole shift.
Mhm.
Not every day, but quite a few times. You have situations that you come into that you see the worst people in society, and I
Mhm.
don't mean that as in detrimental. I mean you see people
Sure.
at their lowest
Yeah.
and at their worst, and you see
Yeah.
the best people at their
Mhm.
lowest and their worst. So there is no defining. This only happens to people that live on the street. This only happens to somebody that's in a dysfunctional family. This happens whether you're rich, you're poor, you're old, you're black, you're white, you're Asian. It does not matter.
Mhm.
You walk into situations that you see that, you experience that, you participate in that environment. So yes, sometimes it is difficult, and sometimes um, you try not to bring it home because at the time that I was a police officer and married my wife, I had been in law enforcement when I married my wife. So it's not like I married my wife and then I became
Sure.
a cop. I was a cop before I married my wife.
Mhm.
You become when you get a family in this particular situation, you become more aware. I say the old days, in the beginning, one of those things where I was single. So, I had this big S on my chest and, nothing could stop me. And, it was exciting and it didn't matter if I had the ups and downs and adrenalines. It was great. We could all talk about it. And, afterwards we'd go out and either, have a drink or, you do something to kind of relieve the stress.
Sure.
that perspective. When you get a family, it's a little bit different because you can't always do that, but you don't
Yeah.
want to bring that home to your family. You don't want to bring home, I, without being brash, I had 5 suicides during one holiday season between Christmas Eve and Christmas Day
Whew.
that we had to investigate. So that one was really, really tough for me, and I only bring that up because typically didn't bring home. My
Yeah.
wife could tell if I was angry, upset, or there were certain aspects that I would discuss with her that I would not discuss with my kids. Um, and she understood. Luckily, I'm very grateful that she understood and she allowed me to express it because the key is communication.
Yeah.
The key is being able to talk about it, but not overly talk about it because and when I say this, it's going to sound strange, but the average individual does not experience what a law enforcement officer or a firefighter or an EMT experiences.
Yeah.
So you can't come home and talk about, for example, the 5 suicides. I can't go into detail about each one of them because that would just be devastating to somebody's psyche to stop and
Yes.
think about, well, you know, but she allowed me to be able to discuss it in certain situations. On that particular holiday year, it was very difficult for me because I had to knock on people's doors and say, and they're going, "Oh, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year," and here, how's your day
Yeah.
going? And you had to say, "I'm sorry, can you please step outside?"
Yeah.
And then try to display that devastating news
Mhm.
and then have to try to help them manage it and then
Yeah.
hold that inside because
Yeah.
you can't cry in front of them. You have to be strong for them because they need somebody to be strong for them. But if you're an empathetic and compassionate person, you need to,
Yeah.
you have to. So luckily I have a partner that allowed me to do that. I was
Yeah.
able to come home
Mm.
and I was able to kind of cry. I was able to kind of let it out a little bit. Not in every circumstance. There were times I come home from a fight, or we get into a fight and I was injured, and I
Mhm.
come home and of course, my wife every day that I went to work, she had to think about, are you coming home?
Mhm.
So it's difficult on the other side of it
Yeah.
from there. So we tried to keep a line of communication open, and that communication sometimes was um, long. Sometimes it was very short, depending upon the circumstance. So
Mhm.
we manage it that way. We manage it with watching great movies and TV and spending
Yeah.
time together and loving my kids and making sure that I was a father that was present, making sure
Yeah.
that I participated in my kids' lives no matter what.
Mhm.
Taking them to dance and going to their plays and their dance recitals and things like this. We became very active. So that's
Yeah.
how I managed it. Um,
Yeah.
I was able to be actively participating in my family's life, but at the
Yeah.
same time, if I came home angry, because there were times that I did, I was able. She let me blow steam off,
Yeah.
and if I came home sad, she let me cry.
Yeah, you were very fortunate really to have the support there that you had whilst you did that job.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for that. And realistically, anybody, most in at least here, I try to go to a therapist. I've got PTSD. I can admit it because of the situations that I had gone into that, I had a career that was almost 17 years old.
Mhm.
So, when I say 17 years old, that's probably the wrong terminology. I
But
had
it
a
makes
career
it
that
it's interesting because it makes it sound like it was your baby.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
It was dear to my heart, and it, you see a lot and you experience a lot during that time period. And, I see every face that of every suicide victim that I had gone to, everybody that was, I see the murder victim, I see the assault victims, I still see the individuals that unattended deaths that, these people died alone. And,
Mhm.
they didn't know one person, he died 2 weeks, they didn't know he was deceased. And that was another Christmas. And always around a holiday. And it is, the people that you look in their eyes and you're trying to resuscitate them, and you see the desperation,
Yeah.
and you can't. there's nothing more that you can do. But you
Mm.
see the desperation in their eye, "Help me." It's difficult for us to go to a standard therapist. I
Mhm.
tried that,
Yeah.
and, I started releasing and said, "Well, just go ahead and tell me about it. Just speak it, talk it out." I started to, and he stopped me, and he says,
Wow.
"I'm sorry, I'm not the
Good to
right therapist for you,"
yeah.
kind of situation. Uh, Now, at least in the environment now, law enforcement and fire and EMTs, there it's been recognized,
Yeah.
because PTSD is typically associated with, you think of combat veterans that
100%.
suffer from
Yeah.
PTSD, but so do individuals like us. I was hit by a vehicle. That's what ended my career. I still have
Right.
PTSD about that.
Yeah.
Every time I go through one of my 8 operations, I stopped and thought about it, reflected back on what
Mm.
started it in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, you in this environment today, luckily, they have facilities and they have therapists and psychologists and
Mhm.
psychiatrists that specifically deal with law enforcement,
Yeah.
firefighters, EMTs, nurses, doctors, that we have the opportunity to go have conversations with these
Mhm.
people now that we can speak freely.
Mhm.
And I have a show on one on my podcast actually where uh, this is warriors for warriors, and there's a facility that specifically is dedicated to law enforcement personnel and firefighting personnel and EMTs and the whole EMS thing where you can come and comfortably open up about that because you can't come home and tell your wife, well, if I could speak honestly, you can't come
Yeah.
home and tell your wife, well, what happened to work today? Well, I came home and I had to take somebody down from a tree that had hung themselves and they'd been there all night and it
Yeah.
put that in detail.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just can't do that because that's not fair to your partner, whoever it
Yeah.
happens to be, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it happens to be. It's not fair to that person to discuss that. But at the same time, when you hold it in,
Yeah.
and it builds up inside you so much. That's why you see cops and firefighters and so forth. You see them as alcoholics. You see them turn to alcohol.
Yes.
You see that,
Yeah.
especially after they retire. You see
Yeah.
them turn to alcohol. You find that they lose their purpose too. This is
Mhm.
what I did for 20, 30 years, and now I don't know what to do with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it puts them on a different path, which I know that we're going to talk about in a minute about reinventing
Yes.
ourselves. But it, the key to this whole managing mental health in regard to EMS and anybody that's suffered any kind of PTSD, no matter what it is, from a domestic violence situation, from a traumatic event that took place in your life, and that's the key word to it, as you know, post
Yeah.
traumatic stress is based upon traumatic incident that took place in your life that has a negative effect on you and not allowing you to move forward or manage or cope your mental health in such a way that is positive and it keeps you down in a lower level of where you need to be working is communication.
Yeah.
And communication helped me overcome what I've been through and have supported me in order for me to reinvent my life and my life purpose.
Yeah. So it was a long career, and you will have had such a massive range of experiences. What's something that you look back on now, maybe a specific time or incident that brings you the most pride or the most happiness?
I have many of them, so I don't know if I can pinpoint one in particular. Like I said, I've had people that have come to me after I talked about a suicide and said, "Thank you. You put me on the right path." I've had individuals that I've arrested that when I when I got in the middle of trying to arrest somebody and we were in the middle of a fight on the ground,
Yeah.
this person that I had arrested a number of years, a couple of years prior to that um, I sat down and talked with him after I arrested him because I had dealings with him over and over again. We knew each
Yeah.
other by name,
Wow.
and I was in the middle of we were trying to arrest this person that was on methamphetamine, which is when somebody's on meth, they are super strong. Number one,
Yep.
they don't listen. Number two,
Yeah. They're a
and
different animal, right?
absolutely different animal. and
Yeah.
we're trying to get a hold of this person, and we're in the doorway of a bar, believe it or not.
Right.
And Mike, this guy saw it happen, jumped down, grabbed the guy, and pulled him back, and just wrapped his arms around him, his legs around him, and said, "Sarge, go ahead and handcuff him." And that to me showed that I had made a positive impact on Mike's life
Yeah.
enough where that when I was in trouble, he came
Yeah.
back and helped me.
Wow, that's amazing. And what was your involvement with the America's Most Wanted cases?
That's really interesting. We had received a phone call. How much detail am I allowed to go into in this?
As much as you're
Okay.
comfortable with. Yeah.
Um, Basically, we received a call, 911 call, in regard to a woman that had said she had just passed an individual. She was on vacation in our city and had said that she just walked by this individual that was a serial rapist that had kidnapped her, held her for about 9 days, and repeatedly sexually assaulted her and attempted to murder her. And
Okay.
she was able to escape. So
Yes.
obviously, she would know this individual very, you personally enough to know that this is him. This is not
Yes.
just somebody that looks like him. This is
Yeah.
not somebody
Yeah.
that. So she called and said, "This is him."
Yeah.
So we looked it up, ran it through NCIS, which is the National Crime Information System here, and
Uh-huh.
it came back as he was like number 8 on America's Most Wanted, based upon the fact that he was a serial rapist, and one that his method of operation was to kidnap a woman and then hold her for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days, and just
Wow.
repeatedly sexually assault them. So when we got that phone call, uh, luckily we were in the area.
Yep.
So 3 units, we converged together, and my lieutenant, myself, and 2 other officers were able to enact a plan that he was in an arcade area that is open. Um, um, I won't say play area, but it had shops and like a
Okay.
little pavilion area. And
Yep.
in the center of it, they had like an arcade for kids on one
Yep.
side, and you had rock shop and a restaurant and things like this. So we had to be very discreet
Yep.
in what we were doing because of who were there and what was around
Yeah.
there.
Were you in
So
plain clothes or
no, we were in uniform.
you were in
Um,
uniform?
because yeah, so we were just happily in uniform, and we were. It was. We say we got lucky because the 2 of us, 2 units were in the area in the right place at the right time, so we were able to get eyes on the guy and then kind of keep an eye on him until the other 2 units showed up, and one of them was a lieutenant and myself as a sergeant, and then the 2 other officers, and we kind of converged on this, made a plan of action, converged on him, and basically took him without incident, um, in the middle of this crowded area, and we're able to bring him in, and obviously took his name off the most wanted list because they
Yeah.
were able to. And she had been here from New Mexico, so
Wow.
uh, he had been
What a
last week. He had been
brave
here from
lady
Mexico.
to yeah, for that
Yeah,
woman to have, seen him and have the confidence to follow that up. Yeah, she
she
was
did,
super.
and the fact that she came in, and because we had to ask her to come in for sure.
Right.
And, we had obviously, we have rooms with two-way mirrors and things like that, but,
Yes.
I mean, that's on TV, so I'm not giving away any
Sure,
secrets.
the lineup.
Yeah, you go watch any TV show, you'll see two-way mirrors, and,
Yeah.
and she came in, and obviously she was still very traumatized by the whole situation, but, she came in and said, "Yes, that is the guy, that's the individual," and, it felt good, that we were able to take this I have another name for him, but we'll call him an individual off
Yeah.
off the street.
Yeah.
Um, that worked. And then the other one, this also was kind of we had a report. There had been um, a national bulletin for this individual, and we got a report that somebody saw him, and he had kidnapped a 15-year-old girl,
Wow.
and from Virginia, believe it or not. We were in
Okay.
Colorado,
Yep.
and said that they saw them in a motel. I said, I'm sure I saw this person in this motel with this girl. And so we basically, again, it was part of a task force at that time. And it was a multi-agency task force. It involved a member of the FBI, member of the police department, a couple members of the police department, a couple members of the sheriff's department. So it was a multi-agency, but I was a sergeant, so I got to be in charge, which was really cool. I am a cool guy, see?
See?
We made a neat little plan of action, and I won't give all the secrets away, but basically we set it up so that um, we allegedly ran into his car in the parking lot, and we needed him to come out and kind of square that away. It took a little bit of coaxing to get him out, but we finally got him out the door. And when we got him out the door, we were able to take him into custody as well. And his
Right.
15-year-old that he had kidnapped from Virginia, we were able to free her as well. And
Yeah.
she was very traumatized because this had been like 10 days he had her actually across country.
Gosh, gee
So
whiz.
yeah, both of those were some very significant highlights of my career that I'm very proud of in regard to.
Yeah, amazing. So you weren't planning on leaving law enforcement anytime soon?
I was not. Like I say, I was getting ready, preparing for the lieutenant's test, and uh, just like my colleagues now, most of them went up the line and went on to be lieutenants and commanders and chiefs and commanders and sheriffs. Actually, one of them I used to work with is two of them actually are sheriffs within
Yeah.
Colorado still. Um, and I worked with them when I was a deputy because I was started my career as a deputy sheriff, and then I moved into the
Yeah.
city police department.
Okay.
Um, I was not. Again, my intention was to continue my career up the line, and eventually become a chief, assistant chief, or retire as a commander or something along that line. And I had a call, and uh, two of my guys had a guy backed up on somebody's property, and
Okay.
the individual was refusing to exit the vehicle, was refusing to provide driver's license information and so forth. And this they called for sergeant.
Yeah.
So I showed up and as a sergeant, and I had that big S on my chest still, not
Yeah.
just for sergeant, but I'm Superman. I stepped out in front of my car, which is a big no-no. So any law enforcement people out there that are listening to this, take this as a lesson learned. I
Yeah.
wasn't thinking clearly, and instead of walking behind my car, I walked in front of my patrol vehicle, which was parked in front of his vehicle. The other two
Right.
cars were to the side,
Yeah.
and because we didn't want him to get out,
Yeah.
um, and he floored it and he pinned me between his vehicle and my patrol car,
Oof.
and then backed up, tried to run me over again, pushed my patrol car out of the way, and then took off down the road. He got about a mile down the road before the guys caught him. There was a significant damage to the front end of his car and so
Yeah.
forth. So he wasn't able to get very far very fast.
Mm.
They took him into custody, and basically, I had injuries that needed attention to.
Yes.
And long story short, because it goes into a lot more than that, but long story short, basically, I because of those injuries, I developed rheumatoid arthritis,
Right.
and it kind of went very rampant. And it's not in my DNA. Rheumatoid is not, so it was kind of weird. It took a long time to figure out what
Yeah.
was going on.
Okay.
Um, it took such a toll, and then the damage to my knees and things like that, that I was basically told that I would have to leave the police department. So, I
You know
made
when
the
the accident happened that that was the beginning of the end? Or did you genuinely think at that time, this is a problem, I'm going to need a few weeks to get better?
um, I genuinely thought that everything was going to be hunky dory, actually, and just like, look, I've gone to the hospital for knee injuries before. Had to have cortisone shots for.
Yeah.
I got a knife cut on my face, right here underneath my eye. You probably can't see the scar anymore, but I had to have stitches there. I broke my fingers. I broke two
Yeah.
fingers while I was arresting a guy for stealing. We were arresting him for auto theft, and
Mhm.
he didn't want to be arrested, and he snapped two of my fingers. We still arrested him, took him to jail, then went to the hospital with my fingers taped together. I thought it was gonna be like the same thing. You
Yeah.
know, you just had a bad day, you got banged up a
Yeah.
little bit, and,
Yeah.
we'll just kinda move forward. Well, I progressively started getting worse, and, it got to a point where, I really wasn't able to effectively do my job, and, you know, at the time, uh, it was very difficult to make that decision that
Yeah.
I was going to have to leave the police department. So, it was after discussions with my wife and my kids and, my family basically, and they had the support of that, and, went in and talked to the chief and the lieutenant and, you know, um, the other sergeants and, everybody. And, we just kind of said, yeah. And they, I had to go through a process in order to get that done. So I had to go to see five different doctors,
Wow.
four doctors, and then a guy that, one doctor that kind of looks at everything they present
Yep.
and says yes or no. Yes, I
Mhm.
agree with these four doctors, or no, I don't agree with these four doctors, in order to get the disability for occupational disability. And um, I had four doctors, including the fifth, the one that validated that said, you're going to be in a wheelchair the rest of your life pretty soon.
Right.
And it, I look back, I'm trying not to be emotional. It was a devastating blow to me because, as I said earlier in the conversation, that's who I was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's who I was. That was my job. That was I. You know, my extended family were law enforcement and firefighters
Mhm.
and EMTs. That's my extended family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
I
get
felt that I was gonna let people down.
that.
I had a
Uh-huh.
team of individuals that I led as a sergeant. I had a team. I don't know if you know the hierarchy of like the police departments or military, but sergeants have a team. You have a
Mm.
sergeant, you have like, and in my case, our case, we have sergeants, we have master patrolmen, we have like a corporal type situation. And so you have a three stripe, two stripe, one stripe, you have a lieutenant. That's your team. The
Yeah.
lieutenant sits at the desk, and the sergeant is the supervisor in the street. And then below you, you've got your corporals, your master patrolman, then you got your regular officers. And the sergeant, you have you have each sergeant's assigned to a different team. Lieutenants, then that team's assigned to a lieutenant, etc. So I felt I was letting all these people down. You know,
What was
letting my
the bigger blow? Was it losing the job, or was it being told that you would lose your mobility?
um, that's an interesting question, actually, because I never thought about it from that perspective. Um, I think it was a combination. To be honest, and not trying to sound egotistical, it was more of a blow to me in regard to losing my job, because again, that was who I was, who I
Yeah.
am, and I felt that anything um, that I would have to overcome physically, I would be able to overcome physically because I'd done it. I was born 3 months premature.
Okay.
And I was born back in a decade that very few premature babies survived.
Mhm.
I won't tell you the exact decade, but we'll just say that that decade, one of those decades, um, well, I'm proud of where I'm at. I mean, I'm 63 years old this October, and and I'm proud of being where I'm at because the
Yeah.
alternative would have been significantly different and could have been different. So I'd overcome a lot of things in my life where I felt that the physical and mental aspect of what I'd been told we could manage and overcome from that perspective. But
Yeah.
never being able to work in law enforcement again was
Mm.
something that was final.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was final. My journey with my health is something that I can manage. I had control over to a certain extent.
Yeah.
My journey with law enforcement was not my choice any longer.
Sure. Yeah.
So
And
I
it
would
was
say
such a significant part of your identity.
exactly. Everybody that knew me from the time I was 15 years old saying I wanted to be a cop,
Yeah.
all my friends, my high school friends, everybody knew that that's what I was going. When I was in college, I went to work. I worked in a couple of restaurants. It's like everybody started as a 15-year-old. I worked in an Italian restaurant, learning. I was a busboy to a dishwasher. to a prep cook to making pizzas.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, and I went to a steak restaurant. I worked in these restaurant environments as I was going to college, and they all knew that my intention, nobody understood why, but my intention was to become a cop.
Yeah.
And so my whole life from the time 15 years old on up,
Yeah.
that's what I was known for and known as. So, yes, it was a significant impact in my life when I was told that you can no longer do this. Um,
Would you compare it to like the sense of loss that someone might experience if they were going through a grieving process?
Absolutely. I can tell you, in fact, the guys in, I can tell you that the majority of the law enforcement community within the Colorado Springs area were kind of going, we'd be driving someplace and something had happened and I'd make the phone call. And pretty soon they started going, Sarge, you're making more arrests now than you were when you were on shift. They're going, relax, just take a breath. Just enjoy what you have with your family.
Yeah.
Stop, just we got this. We got your back. We got you covered. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I grieved over that for quite some time. I was angry, I was resentment, and then I ended up in a wheelchair. I will say that I did end up in a wheelchair because the type of disease that I had moved at an immense amount of speed,
Right.
and it took over. I got some specialists that I ran into down here in Phoenix that actually
Mhm.
helped me to get a handle on it because of the nature of it. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But it, I went through the anger and depression and the typical what we everybody, and I know that people would relate to the five steps of grieving process only because it's been put out there that way. I know the intention of that was not necessarily for this in particular or for losing somebody. It was meant for a different reason. But as everybody relates to that, yes, I went through that. I went through a grieving process. I went through anger. I went through
Yeah.
resentment. I think I went through more anger and resentment than anything else. Then I went through acceptance. And then I went back to resentment because it's like, oh, well, especially every time one of my guys that either worked under me or
Mhm.
beside me moved up the line. And I was not
Yeah.
resenting the fact that they were able to achieve,
Yeah.
to be clear, because I'm proud of them because they worked for me or they worked
Yeah.
beside me, and I helped them to understand how to be a better cop when I was a supervisor to them. But I was resentful for the fact that this was taken away from me not by choice.
Yeah.
So that then made me angry, and I had to go through that for a couple of years, and then when I ended up in the wheelchair, that was a whole new level of going through the grieving process in regard to that, that I
Mhm.
cannot believe this took place.
Yeah.
And so yes, it was very difficult. I had to go through that process a couple of different times actually.
Knowing myself as I do, I know that when I get angry and resentful, I can be quite vindictive, and I'm not afraid to admit it. So I'm just wondering for you, had I been in your circumstances or been through something similar to what you went through, I'd have been really pissed off at the guy that hit me with the car. I think he, if even if I couldn't get my hands on him, which would have been unlikely,
Yes,
I would have had a great deal of interest in what happened next in his life.
I
Did you
will tell
have any
you.
of that kind of stuff going on?
Yes, I will tell you that in Colorado, at least, when you have a situation where you have an incident that, like what took place there, because he was charged with a multitude of charges. First, attempted murder of a police officer, which the plea bargaining in this country is just something to be desired. It needs to change. But he was originally charged with that. And then a whole multitude of he was under the influence of drugs and alcohol and a whole slew of things. So he was looking at a substantial number of years anyway in regard to that because he had felony eluding, he had damage to government property because the damage to the patrol car, he had attempted murder on a police officer, which it got it got kind of he had parents that had money, so
Okay.
um, not to sound that side of it, but
Yeah.
they paid for a good lawyer, so it was knocked down to first-degree assault on a police officer, which is the higher level of assault, felony assault, instead of attempted murder.
Okay.
And then he showed the drug charges that stuck with him because he had like 4 different drugs in his system as well as
Wow.
alcohol. And they blamed it all on that he really didn't know what he was doing,
Right.
and, he didn't have cognitive effect. Well, I looked at it from a different point of view, and he knew
Mhm.
exactly what he was doing, and, um, so knowing that and in knowing that while he was out on bond, he assaulted his next door neighbor by dropping, about a 15-pound rock on the guy's head, um, it kinda compounded that because that again is another first-degree assault,
Yeah.
and, it gave him, I think, close to 20 years in prison,
Okay. Okay.
somewhere, just maybe short of that,
Yeah.
between my charges and, this other individual, the neighbor's charges. They
Okay.
finally said, "Well, there's really something wrong with this guy, and that he
Yeah.
needs to be held accountable for all of these actions." So from that perspective, that gave me some satisfaction, but that still
Yeah.
didn't, negate the fact that I was very, very angry at this individual. And
Yeah.
if you want all honesty, I could say this now, but in all honesty, I would rather have been. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. I would rather have waited for him to be released and taking him out back to say, "Look what you took away from me."
So is
I
he
mean,
still, serving his time now?
no, he's been released. So,
Ugh.
it's kind of one of these things that when we get done with the conversation, I'll give you a more in-depth um, answer to that question. But in
Okay.
reality, I think that he wouldn't have done very well in prison anyway. So I think that
Right.
the time that he did in prison was probably very hard on him anyway. So I have that satisfaction of knowing as well. And
Yeah.
in reality, I still overcame. And no
Mm.
matter what, and the fact that you did what you did, I
Yeah.
overcame. I did not succumb to it. I did not sit in a wheelchair and wallow in my
Mhm.
pity and sorrow, and
Mhm.
my anger and my resentment. I worked through it, and I
Yeah.
was able to move forward in a very positive way and find a new way for giving back to life and giving purpose to my life and to be able to help other people move forward in a positive way.
So there must have been a point when your, for want of a better word, your own attitude to your circumstances changed, where you came through the grieving process or were able to use whatever fuel that gave you in from the anger and resentment that was there. Sometimes you can use that in a positive way because there's lots of energy in it. Something happened that had you think, "Do you know what? That's enough now. I need to start moving forward." So how
You
did
know,
you get there?
I'm going to say that I have to give credit to my family, my whole family, my wife and both my daughters and my sister and my brother-in-law. Um, I have to give credit to all of them first and foremost. But the theoretical kick in the pants was when my oldest daughter, she was going to get married, and we were having the wedding in Las Vegas. And
Nice.
I said, I know that we're paying for your wedding and so forth, but I took her aside,
Yeah.
and this may bring tears to my eyes because it always does. So we have to
Okay.
Photoshop
Buckle
those
up.
out, okay? I said, "What do you want for a wedding gift?" And she said, "I want you to walk me down the aisle."
Mhm.
And I said, "But," and she said, looked me square in the eyes, and she said, "Don't you guys have the saying, as in cops, never say die?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Yeah, we do have a saying, never say die." She says, "I want you to walk me down the aisle."
Mhm.
So that was kind of my kick in the pants. And,
Okay.
I thought, I'm tired of sitting here. I'm tired. I went from 100, when I was a cop, I weighed about 180 pounds,
Mhm.
all muscle, of course.
Yes.
Um, the, or muscle stored for later use in certain areas.
Is that what it was?
um, w- I went from that down to 100 pounds in my journey. And it was very difficult for me to kind of think that I wouldn't be anywhere else. at
Mm.
some point at that time until my daughter pushed me in
Yeah.
that direction.
Mm.
So at that point, I found a surgeon down here, and I took a proactive approach to accomplishing that. And I went to see a brilliant surgeon, Dr. Robert Berghoff, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying his name. It's in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And I explained my circumstance. I went in there with my daughter, my wife, and I said, I want to walk her down the aisle. And he says, I can help you do that.
Amazing.
And that
What was
started the
that
journey.
like? When I've had situations not as drastic perhaps, but similar, where you're something about your health is out of your control, and
Mhm.
you are putting your faith in these gods that we call doctors. And every now and again, you get a really good one who says, I can do that. And then they do it. And it's like your whole world changes.
Whole world changed my life. My quality of life started to improve, immensely. Between that, the cardiologist that I found to help me, because I had to get cleared through cardiology and a bunch of other things. It was a team effort. I
Yeah.
will tell you, it was a team effort. Dr. Doss is one of the premier cardiologists down here. I don't have heart issues, but because I needed to do a stress test and there's a whole slew of stuff that had to be done. And
Okay.
with that understanding that I couldn't go on a treadmill to do a stress test, they had other ways of doing
Oh,
things and trying to
yeah.
get me cleared within a specific amount of time.
Yeah.
Uh, Dr. Doss said, "Yeah, I'm part of this team, and let's move it forward." So, between the surgeon, the Dr. Doss, my personal physician, Dr. Stephen Fry, who he helped me to better manage my rheumatoid arthritis,
Mhm.
and then, believe it or not, an oncologist, hematologist,
Yeah.
Dr. Volk. This team of individuals were able to get me into such a point to that I was able to have the surgery done and
Yeah.
have it done within an effective time to get me on the road to recovery very quickly. I am grateful uh, 100 times, 1,000 times over, because from that perspective, it changed my life in a
Yeah.
very distinctive way that allowed
Mhm.
me to move my life forward and
Yeah.
therefore my daughter's life forward and my wife and my other daughter as well. Because obviously, it's not my sister beat cancer twice.
Yeah.
And we went through her victory lap. My youngest daughter pushed me around the track that they walked in a wheelchair next to my sister. Um, Forgive me.
Forgiven.
So this team of individuals made a significant impact in my life and my quality of life, not just to those around me.
It was a game changer, complete game changer for you.
It was, and I will tell you, there's a lot of work
Yeah.
between everything, and then physical rehabilitation. I will tell you that once the fire was ignited in me again, and my daughter reminded me, and then my other daughter continued to remind me, and my wife continued to remind me.
They were on you.
Yes, that I have the ability and the opportunity to overcome what I needed
Mhm.
to overcome. So I literally was walking the same day my first surgery on the knee, and I
Wow.
recovered from that. I actually recovered from that 5 weeks early,
Yeah.
and it was walking, still with a limp because my
Yeah.
other knee needed to be done as well, and my
Yeah.
hip needed to be done. But it allowed me to walk my daughter down the aisle.
Yeah.
And when that was accomplished and we got that taken care of, then I went back and started having another series of operations. And each one of them, uh, I had to reach deep down inside myself and say, this is obviously in no detriment to anybody that's sitting in a wheelchair at this moment. I can tell you that you have the opportunity to make changes in your life in a positive way if you find the right people, the right team, the right motivation. that it may be small steps in the beginning, but it
Mhm.
can lead to big steps throughout your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I, uh, I went on to have, a total of I've had a total of 8 operations.
Mhm.
I've had 2 shoulder replacements, I've had a hip replacement, 2 knee replacements, a foot replacement, and then 2 surgeries on my eyes. Um, the surgeries on my eyes are just part of the disease
Okay.
that I've got as well. Um, my wheelchair is sitting in the garage collecting dust, and, I have enjoyed my life with my family, my kids, and I
Mhm.
was able to take, that momentum, that motivation, that inspiration
Mhm.
from every one of those individuals, including each and every one of the doctors, including the last one that did my shoulder replacements. I have implemented. They've rebuilt my shoulder in both shoulders
Wow.
with something that I was the only one that had it for the last year. I
Wow.
was the guinea pig for it, and it was manufactured actually in Britain and in France. A portion of it was in Britain, a portion of it was in France. So thank you, Britain. I appreciate
Welcome
that.
to half the country.
um, the uh, that Dr. Sheldon Martin is also part of that team, and they gave me back a quality of life that allowed me to move forward in life, and I just had to make that choice. I had to make
Yeah.
that decision because I literally could have stayed at 100 pounds.
Mhm.
Dr. Volk was ready to put me in the hospital
Yeah.
because of that. I had allergic reactions to certain medications that I was on, and nobody was recognizing it. That's part of that journey as well. I could have
Yeah.
given up completely.
Mhm.
Um, not saying that I hadn't thought about it, because when you get down to that point where you're a burden, you feel that you're a burden on others around you.
Yep.
It becomes to a point where you kind of go, well, maybe I need to remove that burden from other individuals. Um, and that's being honest.
Yeah.
You know, you, if anybody out there that is watching this or listening to this are in that same situation, I need to put this forth to you that you just need to look around you, open your eyes, and see who's in your environment and just ask. You have to be able to be humble enough to just ask. If they weren't there, if you felt that you were being a burden, if you felt that you, they didn't want to be part of your life because of what you were going through, you need to look beside you, look behind you, look in front of you, and see who is there because they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
And just ask. If they can help you, they will.
Yeah.
And if they can't, maybe they'll help you find somebody that will help you.
Yeah.
So it's
Did you ask, or was it the intuition of your family and their observations of you that made them push you in the way that they did?
a combination of both,
Okay.
because it's and again, I'm going to speak very openly and honestly here. I went from an individual that had a team of 13 that I managed and people looked up to. That I when everybody was running away, we were running too.
Yeah.
I've had guns pulled on me, knives pulled on me. I've been in fights where I thought I was going to lose.
Mhm.
I got hit by a car 3 times actually. If you count the 2 times before that, I was hit by a vehicle. One of them in the middle of a bank robbery with my gun out in the middle of the street with somebody gawking at the bank robbery and not
Wow.
realizing they hit the cop that was standing there. I have to laugh about that one because it was he's going, "Oh my gosh, I just had a cop." It's like, "Did you not look around?" Um, the when you go from that environment to having to ask your wife to take you to the toilet,
Mhm.
it is a very humbling,
Yeah, very sobering.
sobering, a great word, situation. So when we got married, I promised my wife that I would love and hold her and take care of her in sickness and in health, and that I
Yeah.
would provide for her, and that and that was all taken away.
Mm.
And I had to ask. I have to
But
go
she
to the
also
restroom.
made that promise to you, though, didn't she?
She did.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And she has stuck to that through, again, 33 years. I'm very grateful for that because a lot of people would not have. A lot
Mhm.
of people would not have been there each and every time that I opened my eyes from a surgery. She
Yeah.
wouldn't have been there each and every time I was working through rehabilitation, physical rehabilitation that was difficult and hard, where I had to, I had to walk, and she had to walk with me. I had to
Yeah.
walk with a
Frame.
huge walker that
Yeah.
my elbows fit into, and I had to hold on to, and I had to do these
Okay.
walks every hour. And
Yeah, because I
physical
was
therapy.
wondering, what you left the police force, what suddenly did your days look like? And then you must have had almost a different daily routine immediately after the accident to what it looked like after the operation. So you've gone through almost a whole other career, or at least a whole different daily routine throughout that period as well.
I did. After I got injured, I went on light duty, what they call light duty, and I was at a desk for a long time before I started seeing doctors. Um, that was in effect to keep me employed and keep me,
Yeah.
we weren't sure what the ultimate diagnosis was going to
Outcome.
be. We had no clue until you go through a series of doctors. And so I went on light duty. Everybody was very supportive. In fact, when I ran out of sick time, I had other officers and other city personnel and firefighters that donated sick time to keep me, because I
Oh, good.
also was in combination with
Yeah.
workman's compensation. And
Okay.
so, which I'm very grateful for every one of those individuals because
Yeah.
they donated sick time to me to keep me with a full paycheck.
Yeah.
So it,
Amazing.
afterwards, like I say, I wallowed in my pity and sorrow for a while and so forth. People, I had cops that stopped by all the time to make sure I was doing all right and things like that, and trying to keep me motivated. I had friends and colleagues that say, "Hey, let's go to lunch," and
Yeah.
to keep me busy and things like that. I made a lot of phone calls about, "Hey, this guy's doing this wrong. You should come get him." um, it's not the Snoopy kind, not the one that peeked out the window, with a pair of binoculars looking around. um,
Did you secretly have a police radio that you were just listening in on?
making sure that they were going to respond to the sergeants, retired sergeants, come take care of this now. Yes, our routine kind of changed dramatically, and my wife became the main breadwinner, and I became the house husband, the home father. So,
Right.
we reversed roles basically.
Yeah.
The only thing, I did not dress that way, but I didn't wear an apron and so
Yeah.
forth. But I was the quintessential house husband. And
Okay.
I took my kids back and forth to school, and um, we did that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The whole role change. The roles changed.
Yeah. Yeah. So your physio that you went through got you to the point where you were able to walk your daughter down the aisle. What was that bit like?
I will tell you, you're just trying to make me cry, aren't you?
I'm sorry, but not really.
um, I mean, they're good tears. So even if they do come, they're good tears because in reality, if I can't say that I would not have been motivated after that. I'm sure I would have, because my kids, my daughters, my wife, my sister, my brother, they all motivated me. My oldest daughter just gave me the ultimate motivation to say, "Look, I'm going to give you something to work for," kind of a thing. So the pictures that we have of us walking down the aisle are her favorite wedding pictures.
Yeah.
It, everybody was on their feet, obviously, for Caitlin, and that was
Yeah.
the whole scope of it was being there for her.
Sure.
But I also had, people that I work with that were part of the wedding and part, there as guests and so forth, that knew the journey that I had been through as well. And I could see and know that their joy was not only for Caitlin, but was for me as well, in regard to being the father that I wanted to be for my daughter.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that must have been a very special moment.
It was. As you can
Yeah.
see, I still get emotional with it.
Yeah.
Um, it was the catalyst
Mhm.
into moving me forward into my next chapter in life,
Yeah.
actually.
So tell me about that. What was the next chapter?
I once I get we kind of got squared away, I decided to go back to university. And once I was, able to function back in society again, so to speak, and I put weight back on and I was feeling much more healthier. I went back to university and went back to my first love. Well, I can't say my first love. When I grew up as a kid, okay, movies. My escape were movies,
Right.
right? And then it's because of my dysfunctional family, because of the fighting and the infighting and the
Yeah.
alcoholism and the all that domestic issues.
Yeah.
My escape was going to the movies because when you go to the movies, you can forget
You're
about
in
all of
another
that.
world. Yeah.
Exactly. You get involved in that. You get immersed. You get, you could become that. You can get. So that was my thing. So I had I knew that at 15 I really wanted to be a cop because at that time that's when so many things had come together that
Mhm.
said, this is what I want to do because I want to help people.
Yeah.
But deep down inside, I still loved movies.
Yeah.
So I went back to school and I got a master's degree in interdisciplinary studies with a focus on digital media and performance, and
Amazing.
fine tuned and honed some digital media to become
Yeah.
a filmmaker and shoot a documentary. And I implemented, and this all fits into what's going on.
Uh-huh.
I At the time I needed to do my thesis, my capstone thesis project for to get my master's, and I decided to do a documentary film. And
Mhm.
I thought back on my whole career, and I thought back on my personal life, and I thought, what is going to be a really good opportunity uh, for me to utilize everything that I've learned in my experiences to make this documentary something very impactful.
Yeah.
So I thought about it, and every person's hand that I'd held before they died, and they said, "Can you please tell my wife I love him, my husband I love him,
Yeah.
my kids I love them, I'm proud of them." Every door I knocked on when I had to deliver news said somebody wasn't coming home, and they said I didn't get to say I love you. I didn't get to say what I wanted to say. The last thing I said, I was angry, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And I thought about all that, and I thought about the fact that I didn't get to say goodbye to my father.
Mhm.
I didn't get to say goodbye to my mother. They My father died, I got a phone call. My mother died, I got a phone call.
Yep.
Um, I'm gonna make an impact on certain aspects, and I'm gonna combine it with what helped me get through all of my surgeries, all of my issues, because you asked me what I did in changing my lifestyle. I
Mm.
I have a collection of probably 2,000 movies and TV programs.
Right.
That's what I did. And I thought,
Yeah.
one more thing before you go.
Yeah.
And I did a short documentary called One More Thing Before You Go. And what we did was take a bunch of people's stories, several people's stories. We went through them and we picked out specifics where somebody didn't get the opportunity to say what they wanted to say before losing someone, do what they wanted to do before um, life changed in an instant for whatever reason,
Mhm.
and use that in combination with creative arts. And
Yeah.
we utilized dance, music, um, drama, art, and then we took each one of those and we recreated that situation so that person had the opportunity to do what they get the last dance,
Wow, amazing.
to enjoy the music, to
Yeah.
do do a painting that
Mhm.
would specify this is what I see now or what I'm missing.
Yeah.
So that when you combine creative arts and healing, the opportunity to say what you didn't get to say, and created One More Thing Before You Go documentary.
Do you know what's interesting about the the two lives that you've had in your first life where
Right.
you were working in law enforcement, your driver, I think, for getting into that was what we would in NLP terms, we would call it an away from, which means that you're compelled, you're motivated by not being like that. I don't want to be like them. I don't want that life,
Yeah.
not that. So it's like I'm seeing this dysfunctional family, or I'm seeing these experiences in my life. I want to do the opposite to that. I'm going this way. And the thing with an away from motivator is it's really, really powerful. You know, it really puts rocket fuel up your backside. With your movies and your documentary filmmaking, um, that's more of a towards. It's what, like, there's just good things. There's just
Right.
good reasons for going there. Um, and it's a different sort of motivation. It has a different type of power to it. When you're doing something because it's actually, I really like that. That's something I'd really like to do.
Mhm.
It comes from a really different place than when it's I need to do this because I don't want that. It's like does this make sense to you what I'm saying?
Abso Absolutely makes sense to me. It is one of them I enjoy doing. I love my job as a cop. I need to say that out loud. I really did
Yeah, yeah.
enjoy what I did. I enjoyed being interactive with people. I did walkabouts.
Mm.
Steve, the guy I talked to earlier about that I was a partner with, and
Yes.
he went on to be a police chief here from
Yeah.
your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
um, we would park the car and we would walk downtown and sit on the benches and talk to people and knock on the doors and go in the shops and things like that. I love my job,
Yeah.
but I agree. When I really look deep down inside, I'm a creator. I love
Mhm.
to create. It brings me a whole new sense of perspective on life when I can create something
Yeah.
that others can enjoy and
Mm.
others can resonate with, and I can tell stories with that do the same thing when I was a cop and helping people, but in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yes, absolutely 100%. And even in doing the documentary, I I started with a documentary because they didn't want you. It wasn't a film school,
Mhm.
so to speak. So they wanted you to create something that the documentary fit
Yeah.
within that realm, basically, because I was doing the creative arts healing study there. I was doing dance study. I studied theater. I studied Shakespeare. I studied, filmmaking. I studied digital aspects of filmmaking and digital audio and everything. They wanted you to
Yeah.
combine something together with all of that so that the documentary fit. But my goal was to come out of this and say, I want to make film. I want to do
Mm.
film. But
Yeah.
then my life took a little bit of a turn for the worse then. I had some allergic
Okay.
reaction to some medication,
Right.
and I really took a downturn. It about killed me, and literally, that's where the oncologist really came involved
Okay.
because he said, "You're going to get off this medication, or it's going to kill you." Period. So my that was cut short as well. I wasn't
Mhm.
able to continue with that, and that's what
Right.
brought me to my. Once I got over that, we were overcoming it. Once we understood it, we dealt
Mhm.
with it, we managed it. It brought me back to a healthy perspective. um, I said, "What am I going to do now?" Because I lost my momentum in making film. I really was on
Yeah.
track. I was moving forward. I was making connections, and my oldest daughter, again, I have to thank Caitlin. Uh, she
We
came in
like
and said, "We like
Caitlin.
Caitlin." She whispered in my ear. She said, Have you ever heard of a podcast?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Here, listen to these." And she said, "I think you would be really good at this. And I think
Mhm.
you really need to invest in maybe starting a podcast and
Yeah.
talk about everything and talk about your experience and talk about this, talk about that." And I said, "What am I going to do with it?" And she said, "You got a documentary that has a basis for it."
Yeah.
And that's where One More Thing Before You Go came from. And she said, "Really explore it. Take your
Yeah.
time." So I did. I took my master's degree, and I used my research. I'm
Yep.
using all these little keywords that they kept pushing into your head while you're in university.
Yes, they do.
I used my research skills, and I thought, yeah, I think I really want to do this. And I listened to a bunch of podcasts, and I really thought, I think I like this. Some of them, as we know, some of them you kind of go, no, that's not for me. Other ones were kind of going, yeah, this is great, and I can combine now that we've got video. We can
Hmm.
combine the digital aspect of it and
Yes.
create a talk show instead of just a podcast, as like what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And it
100%.
create I'm creating again, and that creating inspired and lit another fire in me that allowed me to really think about it. And
Mm.
that's where, again, one more thing before you go,
Yeah.
podcast and the book that I'm about to write, or that I am writing, came about. And it's podcasting and finding purpose. Podcasting with a purpose is the book that I'm in the middle of writing at the moment, and it's 10 steps to connect, engage, and grow your audience.
Love
And
that.
I'm taking everything that I've learned, and I'm taking the creative aspects that I've missed, and I put it into reinventing my purpose. So
Yeah.
now that I'm able to take as you know, the part of the platform of One More Thing Before You Go podcast, especially in the beginning, and it's evolved since the beginning, just like everything. You've got to grow and evolve and, niche your audience down and make sure that you give your audience what you're looking for. But I was able to tell stories from people who didn't get to say what they wanted to say to somebody that they lost. I was able to get that, say, bring people on the program that said, yes, there's a possibility that whether you believe in the paranormal, supernatural, whether you believe in the other side, this is an opportunity. Here's some options for you that to understand that even though you didn't get to say goodbye, you didn't get to say I love you, I'm proud of you, I miss you, that you still can, but you can do it in a different way.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
went to a multitude of perspectives so that we tried to give everybody the opportunity to understand grieving, how to get
Yes.
through grief.
Yeah.
Understand that it's okay to grieve and to be angry, to be resentful. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be humble. It's okay to ask for help. We told stories of, or we do not just told, but we tell stories of individuals that um, loving someone who's dying,
Mhm.
marrying your high school sweetheart, knowing she's got a disease that's going to kill her, but
Yeah.
you still marry her and you still try to make the best of life and you're with her through that journey.
Yeah.
We share stories like that. And that it gave me new purpose. It said,
Yeah. Yeah.
although I loved my chapter in life when I was a law enforcement officer, I gave what I could in within that. I have a new opportunity, a new chapter in my life that I was able to reinvent my purpose.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
reinvented my purpose in such a way that I can use digital media and mass communication
Mhm.
in order to affect people from all over the world, not just
100%.
in my environment as a cop,
Yeah.
within the state of Colorado, city of Colorado Springs, break it down.
Yeah.
I was able to contact and help people from all over the world and give them opportunity to say what they want to say, give them the opportunity to air it out, to talk about it.
Mhm.
I've brought people on that have said, I've never said that anywhere. And I was able
Yeah.
to say it on this program. Um, and give them the opportunity to say, hey, maybe there is something on the other side. Well, I have something to look forward to. I have something to hopeful for,
Yes.
and things like this. So it gave me the opportunity to reevaluate myself and reinvent myself into a new purpose. And I say that because I was told by 5 doctors
Mhm.
that I would be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, eventually in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I spent 4 years in a wheelchair before I realized that I don't need to be here. And that was through the motivation of my daughters, my wife, my family, my colleagues, uh, fantastic doctors, each and every one of them I love,
Mhm.
who said that you can do this. You have to have the mindset. You need to
Yeah.
connect your mind, your body, and your soul to
Yeah.
bring this all together in
Mm.
order to say, yes, I can accomplish this. Yes, I can move forward.
Yeah.
Yes, there are circumstances that cannot be changed.
Mm.
But that doesn't mean that you still cannot take that opportunity to reinvent your life and move your purpose in another way,
Yep.
motivate people, inspire people,
Mm.
educate people. if you do have a disease, which I've had people on my program that have a disease that is not curable, it
Yeah.
is not going to go away, but
Mm.
they come on the program to say, just because they tell you you have 5 months to live, I'm here 5 years later.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And
amazing.
you need to connect your mind, your body, and your soul. You need to connect with yourself and say, I am important. I am worthy, and that
Yeah.
I belong to this universe and to
Yeah.
people around me enough that I can move myself forward in a positive way and help others to do the
Mhm.
same thing, even though I am in this situation.
Yeah. There's so much crossover in what you have um, allowed people to express on your show, and really what I would call the borrowing benefits that I've had from speaking to the people that have come on my show.
Right.
Um, I don't know how much my show is of value to other people, but it's immensely valuable to me.
Well,
and I've got
yes.
so much from the conversations and yourself
Mhm.
included, without question, from talking to you today. There are things that I will recall months later, and I think, wow, I got that wisdom from Ashley Braxton. That was Sarah Im just
Yeah.
gave me that inspiration, and then I'll recall these conversations that I've had with people. And I think that um, there is something really potent about speaking to what are otherwise considered just ordinary everyday people.
Right.
Because I'm no Joe Rogan or Oprah Winfrey. This is not some high class talk show, but the value in what these people share and what they offer for our audiences is not just super humbling, but it reminds me that I almost feel like I have a responsibility to fight for my place on this planet.
Mhm.
If something goes wrong, if the odds are not in my favor, I'll give myself a window of opportunity to skulk around and, poor me for a little while. But it's a window of opportunity. We're not hanging around there too long, because I almost can't justify it when I hear stories such as yours, where you have worked so hard to come out the other side, bigger, better, brighter, and still offering something back to the world. Who am I to sulk about the bad day that I'm having?
I 100% agree with you with everything you just said. It is a situation that each one of us, we all have journeys in life,
Mm.
as we know, and each of our journeys may be similar in nature, but we're all the same. We
Yeah.
all still have to think about what step we're taking, that
Mm.
first step to move forward. Because if you don't take that first step, you're never going to move anywhere
Yeah. Yeah.
if you don't take that first step. And in reality, we're allowed to be angry for a little bit. We're
Mm.
allowed to be resentful for a little bit. Like you said
Yeah.
earlier about skulking around, we're allowed. We can do that because we're human beings and we have the opportunity to say, yes, I can feel sorry for myself for just a little bit. But pull your boots up, you know,
Yeah.
pull
Yeah.
your pants up
Yeah.
and tighten your belt and you know, understand that you have something to offer to other people. You have something to offer to this world that is a benefit,
Hmm.
even if you're in a negative situation. Because if you have worked through a negative situation, you have worked through obstacles in your life because life always has obstacles, no matter what. Life has obstacles. It can be, I don't want to get up this morning. I didn't get enough sleep last night. We all have to overcome that. But when
Yeah.
you look around you, there are so many other people out there that are going through journeys that are very, very similar to yours, or if not the same,
Yeah.
and that we're all in this together
Yeah.
and we need to move forward. And in reality, life can change in an instant.
Yes. Yeah.
And if we remember that life can change in an instant, I can tell you that from personal experience, it can
Yeah.
change in an instant, personal and professional experience.
Mm.
that is up to us individually to take that first step and to move
Yeah.
forward. It's up to us to recognize that we just need to look around ourselves and see what we have, be grateful for where we are in life, what we have in this life, and grateful for the people and those individuals that are around us that we just need to extend a hand.
Mm. Yeah,
And
definitely.
if you're on the other side of it, I'll make this quick because I know we're running
That's
long.
all right. No, we're good. Don't worry.
The other option is if you are looking from the outside in and you see this individual that is struggling, you see this individual that doesn't want to. I want to tell you how hard it was for me the first time I had to ask my wife to walk me to the toilet.
Mm.
I emphasize that just because that's a necessity in life.
Yeah.
And I was afraid to ask my
Mm.
wife to say, please,
Yeah.
you need to look for those individuals that you can tell they're seeking help. You can see it in their eyes. You
Yeah.
can see it in their face. You can see it in their heart and reach out and extend a hand.
Yeah. 100%. I'm curious and also would like you to share with our audience here. There have obviously been some interviews that you've done on your show where you have had some profound conversations, people that maybe really made an impression on you. What are what have been your highlights from doing what you do now? If people wanted to go off and listen to one more thing before you go, what's the episode that you would say they have to listen to this one? This conversation blew my mind.
Well, see, oh, that's difficult. I say it's difficult because I'm at like 220 episodes.
Okay.
So, and I have a lot of favorites within that.
Yeah.
Um, I would say if you really want to understand the value of life
Mm.
and understand what it means to love someone without fail,
Mhm.
uh, loving someone who's dying, and I do not know the episode number. Please forgive me. Like I said, I'm over 200.
Yeah.
Loving someone who's dying, profound conversation.
Yeah.
This individual, his journey, he ended up with problems on his own, health wise. I have
Yeah.
a fly that will not leave me alone.
Yeah.
The
You've made
yeah, we need friends, but not that one. Um,
a friend.
I would say that one would be one at the top of my list in regard to overcoming and regard to loving.
Hmm.
Uh, I did one recently with Seth Dietland. Um, he talks about angels and his journey with angels. If at all possible, I would love to be able to send you some recommendations if you don't mind
Yeah,
putting them in the
do.
show notes.
And yeah, and I will put them in the description notes for the show for sure. Yeah,
That would be
definitely.
great because, like I said, I've got. I mean, there's any number of ones, but it's very difficult. I've talked to one woman who her life purpose now is to she had a journey where she was literally when you talk about dysfunctional family,
Mm.
she was raped when she was 5 years old,
Oh,
and that continued until she into her like 26 years old. She had
God.
been through numerous domestic violence situations in regard to that environment, drug, alcohol abuse,
Yeah.
everything. And she came out on top to create a foundation to help other women work through that in a safe haven for them so
Yeah.
that they have a place that they can go to and a place
Okay.
that they can know that they've got others around them.
Mhm.
Warriors helping warriors. That's another one that
Right.
is individuals. They were first responders themselves. One of the guy that runs it mainly is a soldier, and he suffered PTSD from his Afghanistan days. And his
Okay.
wife was a first responder, a police officer,
Yeah.
and they created a unique facility that people can travel to, and you can, even if you don't have the money. That if you're there are too many law enforcement officers and firefighters that commit suicide every year that do not make the news
Yeah.
because they just can't handle it anymore. They
Yeah.
give this facility as an opportunity for anybody within the EMS, soldiers and firefighters and cops, and hope that they have a safe haven they can come and talk and discuss with people. I mean, there's just so many that I yeah, if you'll please give me the honor of just being able to give you some
Definitely. No,
recommendations, I'll
we would
send them
love
to you
that.
today.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah, thank you. Um, is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you think might be useful or important to add?
Life can change in an instant. Take the time to stop and smell the roses, as the old cliche says. Look around you, see who loves you. Take the time to say what you wanted to say.
Yep.
Do what you want to do, because you may not always have that opportunity to do or say what you wanted to say before losing someone.
Yeah.
So, one more thing before you go, take the time.
Yeah. Michael, it has been an absolute joy and a pleasure to speak with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for your time today.
It's been an honor being on your program. Thank you very much for allowing me to share my journey and my story. And I look forward to hopefully inspiring and educating and motivating people down the road. And don't forget to watch for one more thing before you go.
We most certainly will. Thank. Okay, so what did you think about Michael? He's basically a bionic man now after all of those joint replacements and operations that guy has been through. I love what he said around going through all of those experiences, deciding to give up the wheelchair, deciding to put in the physio work. He said that he rejected the option to give up. And I really like that because it's almost as if, well, of course there is the option to give up. Of course it's one of the cards on the table. That just happened to be the one that he rejected. So yeah, I think that's a really nice way of phrasing and expressing the idea of giving up when it's not what you want to do, is that you reject that option. I think overall, as with many of these podcasts, I found this one incredibly humbling. I love what he said around look in every direction to see who is there and ask for help. And I think that that's something, particularly for British people, I think that's something we really struggle to do. But look around in every direction and see who is there and ask for the help. And I really love that Michael's family was such a rock for him throughout all of those circumstances that he went through in his recovery, because he said something about how he had to ask his wife to help him go to the bathroom. He mentioned that a couple of times, and how she hadn't signed up for that. And yet he simultaneously said, you know, I agreed to stick with her through sickness and in health. And it was like, yeah, she agreed to that too. That's why she did those things for you. And I think that he's been incredibly blessed to have such a motivating, but also real strong foundation of a family there to support him. And I suspect that he already knew that, but now he knows it in a whole other way. He knows this on a whole other level now. And sometimes that's, you know, what life throws at you, is that you really bond in a different way when you go through traumatic experiences with the people around you. We had a nice conversation about meta programs in there. So his previous job in law enforcement was very much driven by things that he wanted to move away from. His new career, which is more artistic, more creative, is all about stuff that he enjoys that he wants to move towards. Now, there's a lot of people that would say, especially in the NLP world, that your goals should all be towards, because it's more positive, and moving away from stuff definitely creates some stress, and so it can use up extra energy. So there is a downside to that. Naturally, I'm more of an away from person, wouldn't you know it? And so I'm more motivated by the stick than the carrot. And I suspect I'm not alone in that. In fact, comment if you're the same as me, let me know. The best combination is probably a little bit of both. So if you are setting goals right now, particularly with New Year coming up, don't just think about what you're getting away from, and don't just think about what it is that you want to move towards. Have a balance there. because then that way you're using power from both places to move you in the right direction. What else am I going to say? I'm also going to say that along with so many of these shows that I have filmed now, this one leaves me with that statement, maybe it's an affirmation by now, of who am I to complain? And I mean that in the sense of these stories that people are sharing with me, and I'm so very grateful and humbled that they do share their stories with me, really caused me to reevaluate my bad days. Because when I have a bad day now, I ask myself, is it really as bad as XYZ? And I refer back to these shows, and so I'm personally finding these conversations to be valuable in that way, and I hope that they're valuable in some similar way for you too. What else did I want to say? Yeah, I guess the couple of final things I will leave you with from Michael and from our chat there today is, remember that life can change in an instant, and to reach out and extend a hand. And that may be because you need someone to hold your hand at that point in time, but it could also be because there is someone who is close to you, there is someone who is within your vicinity who needs that support right now, who is not themselves reaching out and asking for the help that they require. So be the person who steps up and reaches out a hand and looks in every direction to see who you can support and how. But for now, thank you all so much for watching and listening to this one. I hope that you've really enjoyed it. If you did, make sure that you give it a thumbs up on YouTube, a 5-star review if you would be so kind on iTunes, and I will see all of you for the next show. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. The People Building podcast was produced and edited by Gemma Bailey. You can find out more information about our products and services on peoplebuilding.co.uk, where you can also join in the conversation around specific episodes. The information, opinions and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. It should not be considered professional advice. Unless specifically stated otherwise, we do not endorse, approve, recommend or certify any information, product, process, service or organisation that is presented within the podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced